Hey everybody, I'm here with Josh Reinstein. He is the director of the Christian Allies Caucus and president of the Israel Allies Foundation, both organizations that if you don't know about already, you'll learn about here today and you should know. And he is also the author of a brand new book called Titus, Trump, and the Triumph of Israel. A little alliteration for you. And so we're going to talk about that too. Hey Josh, how's it going?
I'm doing great. Good to be on the show. Thank you.
Josh, so first for our viewers, can you just tell us a little bit more about what you do? I mean, for anyone in the pro-Israel world, we all know you really well on the Israel side of things, but I think it's important for them to know what prompted before the book, who was Josh and what are you doing?
All right, great. Yeah, in 2004, we started something called the Knesset Christian Allies Caucus. And the idea was to build a direct line of communication and cooperation with Christian leaders around the world and the Parliament of Israel. And that really led to this new relationship between Jews and Christians in the 21st century. What followed was something we couldn't predict, that in 2006, the House of Representatives launched our first sister caucus called the Congressional Israel Allies Caucus. And then we formed the Israel Allies Foundation to coordinate the activities of our sister caucuses around the world. Today we have 43 Israel Allies caucuses in different countries, about 1,000 members of parliament in our network. And what we do is we take biblical support and we turn it into real political action, which is what we call faith-based diplomacy.
And you're working with Christian legislators all around the world.
Well, it's Christian legislators, Jewish legislators, sometimes even secular legislators. It's people who really have a heart for Israel and worked from a biblical point of view to see how can they support Israel.
Can you give us just a success story of something that, had the caucus not been in formation, that wouldn't have been a diplomatic victory for Israel? Or, I mean, I know probably a lot of that maybe is under the radar, but what's above the radar?
Well, I think one of the biggest successes we had in faith-based diplomacy was the embassy move to Jerusalem. We were working on that issue for 14 years. And the real idea was, how do we turn it from just a Jewish issue to also a Christian issue? And then once Christians got involved together with the Trump administration, we saw it happen very quickly. So I think that embassy move is really a symbol of the greatest success of faith-based diplomacy. But other initiatives include in the United States, the 32 anti-BDS legislations that we spearheaded that made it illegal for states to contract with companies and organizations that were involved in boycott, divestment, and sanction. Our anti-Semitism legislation, the African bloc of Christian nations that we have today, about 10 countries that are Christian that are standing with Israel and Africa. Eastern European support is something that we worked on very carefully. So there's a lot of great examples to point to of the great things that happen when Christians get involved with political discourse.
Mm-hmm. I feel like you even have your finger on the pulse a little bit more than, I mean, I know that American Christians sort of know that there's a lot that Christians here are doing to advocate and support Israel, but other countries are as well. What countries are out there that you feel like just have a really strong Christian Zionist movement?
Well, look, Latin America is exploding with support for Israel. It traditionally was always a very anti-Israel region of the world, but today we're seeing incredible support from Brazil, Central America. Guatemala was the second country to move their embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, and that was by no coincidence. Also a push from Bible-believing Christians. Also Africa, we're seeing a lot of strong African countries stand up with Israel. Zambia, Uganda, Kenya, Malawi, Ghana. These are all countries that are standing strongly with Israel, and now we're seeing a lot more support in Asia as well. So it's really something that's sweeping the world. And I have to say that faith-based diplomacy today is the most important weapon that Israel has in its diplomatic arsenal.
That's amazing. That's really encouraging, especially what you had to say about Latin America. I was there when Jimmy Morales was at the Museum of the Bible and made his announcement with your partners in America. And it was just an incredible thing because all of it was presented through a Christian lens, so here we have this political leader, but he's saying that he's acting with courage and he's doing so infused with faith from the Bible and what he believes to be true. And so I just found the whole thing really inspiring. Okay, so now let's talk about the book. Do you have the book? Pop it
I
up
got the
on.
book right here. Here you go. You can get it on Amazon. Titus
Wait,
Trump and the Triumph of Israel.
when is your actual publication date? Is it out already?
It actually delivers on the 1st of September in just a few days, but you can pre-order it today.
Sure. Okay, great. So we're knocking on the door of your pup date. I hope you have a party or something planned for that day. Don't let Corona ruin that for you. That's a big day in an author's life.
I think for me, the party will be taking a nap. It's been quite hectic running everything from the TV show to the Christian Allies Caucus to writing a book. I think I'll take that day off as celebrating my book release.
Do that. Yeah, no, anyone who's ever gone on this journey, a book is not the same as just a bunch of articles. It is very, very hard and very, very difficult. So, Josh, what inspired you? I don't think that you woke up one morning. I mean, I know you're a doer and you're an action man, but I don't think being an author was on your bucket list. So, what inspired you and provoked you to write this book?
Well, there are several things. Number one, I was getting a lot of questions throughout the last 16 years from Christians about how does their support for Israel, how is it seen in the Jewish community and the Israeli community. Jews were asking why some Christians support Israel, why some don't. It's kind of the culmination of all the work that I've done in faith-based diplomacy throughout the last 16 years. And I wanted to have a one-stop shop manual that not only explained the biblical side of Israel and why you should support it biblically, but also legally, archaeologically, politically. And so it was important for me that when people had these questions that I had a source that I could, point to say, read this book and you'll know not just why you should stand with Israel, but how to stand with Israel. And secondly, I realized that there was really a clash of civilizations. We're seeing Judeo-Christian values under attack. And it was important to spell out why that's happening and why people are standing against Israel. It's not clear. For example, Israel's the only free democracy in the Middle East. We're the only country that has women rights. Not only can a woman show their face in public and drive a car and get a job, which isn't the case in many of the countries around us, but they could be the prime minister of Israel like Golda Meir, or the speaker of Israel like Dalia Itzek, or the head of the Bank of Israel like Kernit Flug. So why aren't traditional liberal places like universities and the media championing Israel as an incredible story of victory over Islamic theocracy or totalitarian regimes? And so it was important to spell out the biblical point behind it, because if you don't look at Israel through a biblical lens, you'll miss the story.
All right. And so I'm just thinking about your own career in Israel advocacy, and I've known you for a long time. All of us have known you for a long time. So you've been doing Israel advocacy there in the Knesset in Jerusalem for 3 presidents now, right? So why does he get to be featured on your book? What was the
So the connection really is that you have to look at Israel through a biblical point of view. And the first question is, why Titus? Titus was the person who destroyed the Second Temple. And when he did so, he declared victory over the God of Israel. In his mind, he won. Paganism won over monotheism. The Romans beat the Jewish people and the God of Israel. They built the Arch of Titus in Italy to celebrate that. But people who understood the story and the prophecies that were to come realized that this was just the beginning of prophecy, that the Jewish people, their day wasn't over. They were going to be exiled, but then one day they'd be gathered. So they saw this from a biblical point of view and realized what was going on. Today in Israel, the same thing's happening. And that's why Bible-believing Christians are our best friends. They look at Israel from a biblical perspective. And so they understand what's happening. When they read the newspaper and they hear about things in Israel, they put it in the proper context. And now let's go to Trump, where I used him as the test case. Bible-believing Christians are standing with Donald Trump. They're supporting him, but they said they want him to do good things for Israel. And Donald Trump it probably is the best president we've ever had for Israel and Israel relations. And he keeps his word. So he said he's going to do it. He passed the Republican platform on Israel. And he went down the list one by one, doing these incredible sea change events. But that's the power of faith-based diplomacy. When Christians get involved with political discourse, incredible things happen. And so that's what I tried to show in the book, Titus Trump and the Triumph of Israel, from all the way in history from back then to today, what has been the journey and how have Christians affected change here in Israel today.
So you mentioned the list, like just the list of things that Christians have been advocating for legislative purposes for Israel for a long time. Israel embassy, moving the embassy to Jerusalem was top of that list. What were some of the other things that you saw happen under Trump's presidency that had sort of been on your Hanukkah wish list?
All right, so our organization, Israel Allies Foundation, put out a list in 2015 pretty much of the top 10 things that America could do for Israel and to enhance the Israel-American relationship. And our goal was to get one done in the next 10 years because they were big ones. Donald Trump in the last 3.5 years has done 9 of them. And it's really incredible. He's done them so fast that some of them were missed. But just to go over the list, first of all, he stopped the terrible Iran deal. I mean, the Iran deal was a disaster. It was going to give Iran nuclear weapons. He reversed it. A major move, and it's really strengthened Israel because of it. Number 2, he recognized sovereignty in the Golan Heights. I mean, that's something that people have been working on for 30, 40 years now. We declared sovereignty. No one recognized it. Now America recognized it. It's a sea change in international policy. He defunded UNRWA, the organization that was perpetuating the Palestinian refugee movement, so that Palestinian refugees every generation, their number grows instead of diminishes like every other refugee in the world that's run by UNHCR. He passed Taylor Force Act, making it illegal for America to give money to the PA that was going to terrorists. The PA pays terrorists to kill not just Israelis, but Americans. And they get that money for life. And Trump put a stop to it. He stopped using the term illegal settlements. As you know, the communities in Judea Samaria are not illegal. They're disputed at best. And the State Department was always saying illegal settlements. So he took that verbiage away. I mean, really, it's unbelievable the type of things that he's done. And I go through it in the book one by one, why he did it, how he did it, and why was this an important issue for Christians.
I think that's really helpful, especially just in the fog and chaos that 2020 has created. It's hard to remember what all has happened in the last 4 years. But yeah, if another 4 years, we're all going to work ourselves out of a job, I guess, in terms of presenting things that need to happen that are in Israel's favor and interest. Well, that's great. So congratulations. I know this is a huge achievement, and pushing out the book and spreading its message is another journey after you write the book. It's not all over. The work's just begun. But I do think it's really important. Were you strategic in your publication date before November elections, or is that just coincidence?
No, it was absolutely strategic. I want as many people to read it before the elections as possible so they can make an informed opinion before they go out and vote. But not only that, it's not about who to vote for. It's about Christians and all people, really. They need to go out and vote. If you don't vote, then you don't really have a say. And so I'm trying to encourage people to take action, to do something. Either way what you believe, you need to take a stand for that and do something. And I know in the Christian community, there's a lot of people who are like, we'll just pray about it, and that's the realm of man, and we're in the realm of God. But God helps those who help themselves. And so I think it's very important to encourage people to go out and vote. And that's why I wanted the book to come out before the presidential elections. We've done tremendously well with the pre-sales right now. A lot of churches and organizations are buying the book and spreading it to their congregations. But I really believe that now that the book will be launched on September 1st, a lot of people will understand the need for this type of putting things in context. A lot of things going crazy around the world and people don't understand why. And I think the book kind of puts these things in context. So I appreciate the opportunity to talk about it on your show. And Shelley, I know that you're a celebrated author. So it's great to be in good company.
Well, listen, so tell our listeners where they can buy the book.
Well, I think the easiest way and the best thing to do is go on Amazon.com and you just type in Titus Trump and the Triumph of Israel. It'll come up. You can get, the soft cover, the hard cover, the Kindle. There's all different options. But the most important thing is to try to read the book, to get it out there, to get it to your friends. And I think it's going to be something that if you love Israel, you'll love the book. It's kind of a play on the tourism ministry's slogan here. They say, if you like the book, you'll love the country. Obviously, they're talking about the Bible. But I think that for people already, this is something that will solidify, what's happening in Israel, and then how can they get involved going forward.
Absolutely. Well, I would love to have you on in the future too. I mean, there was a lot of things that you said that sort of sparked, like we could do lots of side conversations about, one of which would be BDS movements on campus. And I would love to talk to you about that in the future, but we'll leave election year for election year and get this pushed into people's hands and hopefully make them more educated and activated about the things that you talk about. But thank you for all that you do. I don't know if everybody caught it, but you're in Jerusalem. What time is it there in Jerusalem right now?
It's only 6:15. You know, in Israel, we have our workday, and then we wait for America to wake up, and then we start our second workday.
Your
So
workday again.
we're just getting started over here. But I appreciate that, Shelley. It's always great to see you, and you know, you're one of the strongest defenders for Israel and America, and we're very proud to do a lot of cooperation with you and the Jerusalem Connection.
For sure. Well, we'll be in touch again, and thanks so much. And I'll link out from this video to the Amazon link and how you can get Josh's book. Thanks, everybody.